Hello and welcome. My name is Reverend Dr. Mae Elise Cannon from Churches for Middle East Peace, and I'm grateful you're here for this Pilgrimage to Peace conversation with Suleiman Khatib and Tuli Flint from Israel and from Palestine as we talk with Combatants for Peace about faith and activism, freedom and oppression, a Pilgrimage to Peace event. So welcome. We're going to start by showing a video about CMEP, and in a few minutes you'll have an opportunity to see a video from Combatants for Peace as well. Churches for Middle East Peace is a group of more than 30 church denominations and organizations around the United States committed to pursuing security, justice, and equality in Palestine, Israel, and the broader Middle East.
We work in close coalition with a number of organizations, faith-based, interfaith, or secular, all of whom are committed to justice and peace in the Middle East.
They've come together from different perspectives, conservative and liberal, to agree upon multiple policy positions. At CMEP, our priority is to educate, elevate, and advocate. Churches for Middle East Peace is a leading Christian advocacy organization here in Washington, D.C. and around the United States. We meet regularly with the White House, senators, congressional representatives, the State Department, and even heads of state. We've had the opportunity to speak and to educate at the United Nations and in other global forums.
We have three advocacy priorities: holistic peace building, humanitarian and economic assistance, and human rights.
We also host advocacy summits in Washington, D.C. every year, and these are a great opportunity for Americans to come to the Capitol and speak with their congresspeople about issues that are important to them.
We want to educate American Christians about what's happening in the Middle East. We travel with Israelis and Palestinians, and we bring them to the U.S. to talk about their experiences and their realities.
Israelis are afraid, and they say about the Gaza Strip, we left and we got rockets.
As Palestinians, every aspect of our life is controlled by Israeli military orders and regulations.
We offer the opportunity to have people go to Israel-Palestine on one of our multi-narrative trips. Once you see injustice visited upon children, once you see the wall and go through a checkpoint, it really changes your perspective.
Another priority is to elevate local voices from the Middle East.
We've brought Israeli and Palestinian leaders to speak directly to members of Congress and their staff and the struggles that they face.
Being able to explore, learn, understand, and participate in making peace through having these conversations.
We have the opportunity to meet face-to-face with communities under threat of demolition or displacement. We spend time in Gaza and get to meet with mothers whose children are suffering from malnutrition, to meet with children in Ofer prison.
Children were beaten, they were injured. It's the only reality they know.
These are just some of the realities that we witness firsthand, and our responsibility is to come home and to tell our elected officials about the things that we've seen. Part of our work at CMEP is to support the sustainability of the Christian community in these places, to provide ways for them to be able to stay in their homes, and for the place where our faith tradition began to be able to thrive.
In Palestine, in the land of conflicts, we are people, Christian people. There are those who want to erase your civilization, your presence. We are suffering. What we ask from the Christian American to support us, to stand with us, to give hope for us.
Christians in the Holy Land tell us on a regular basis that our advocacy work here in the U.S. makes a huge difference and gives them hope.
The church is called to be peacemakers. The work that Churches for Middle East Peace is doing in really promoting a deep sense of peace and equality and justice in this land, and playing a major role in helping the church in the U.S. begin to understand what is really happening in this land.
We're We're all survivors of trauma. And the more we hear each other suffering, the more we might be able to move forward.
One of the things that we hear regularly from our friends and brothers and sisters in the Holy Land is about how difficult their current realities are. And yet they do not give up hope. And so for us here in the United States, we need to be reminded that despair is a luxury of the privileged. We can support their work by encouraging them, praying for them, advocating on their behalf here in the United States.
It's possible. It's possible for us to overcome. It's possible for us to reconcile with each other.
It's when people join forces to save lives, then maybe our leaders will hear.
Engaging in the work of human rights and advocating for justice is a discipleship journey for those of us who choose to follow Jesus.
What really drives our work, what inspires us, is the belief that peace is possible, justice can prevail.
Welcome. We're glad you're with us. So many people have joined us already, and as you come in, feel free to put in the chat your name and where you're joining us from. In a little bit, we'll have the opportunity to have questions, but we're grateful for all of you who've chosen to join this Pilgrimage to Peace event, and especially to our guests from Israel and Palestine, Tuli and Suleiman. So welcome from Combatants for Peace. We're grateful for this conversation. I'm eager to introduce you to these two gentlemen who are quite esteemed. Both of them are representatives of Combatants for Peace. But before I tell you their bios and give them the opportunity to say hello, we wanted to show you a video clip from Combatants for Peace. I had the privilege of meeting Suleiman, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, at an event where we screened their film, Disturbing the Peace. And so we wanted to show you a clip of the incredible work that they do, moving from combatants and being transformed to those who are advocating for both justice and peace on behalf of their people. So we'll show you this video from Combatants for Peace, and then we'll enter into the conversation.
I was 4 years old when we were attacked on Yom Kippur. I remember us running to the shelter in Tel Aviv. It's very concrete for a child. They want to kill us. And I really didn't understand, why do they hate us so much?
ناصر أخوي كان أصغر مني له كان تقريبا عمره 14 سنة. الجيش اللي حكوا له أطلقوا عليه رصاصة. أنا ما بعرفش كيف هذيك اللحظة قدرت أتحمل الموقف.
كان عندي حلم أني أكون مقاتل في صفوف الثورة الفلسطينية يعني وأكون جزء من الكفاح المسلح ضد الاحتلال. كنت مستعد أنه أموت في سبيل هاي الأفكار.
I was admitted into the most prestigious unit in the Israeli army. I was extremely proud. I knew my father was proud.
صرت أفكر كتير إيش أنا دوري في الحياة هنا. فاخترت إني أعمل عملية استشهادية. זה מקומם, זה פשוט מרגיש טרור. ככה מרגיש טרור בעיניי.
מישהו התקשר ואמר שיש פלסטינים שמוכנים להיפגש איתנו.
كنت كثير خايف إنه قد يكون في مصيدة يعني هون.
We find that we actually have something in common. That willingness to kill people you don't know.
عندهم قوة يا جميل مش طبيعي. بده يجي كم واحد من المقاتلين من أجل السلام رفضوا الخدمة يغيروها.
إذا أنت قريتي عن نيلسون مانديلا شخص لحاله غير دوله كان كل الدين وغير كل النظام، وأنت بتعرف إنه شخص لحاله، كل شخص لحاله كيف قدر يسوي هيك؟ كيف قدر يسوي؟
אנחנו מזמינים את כוחות הביטחון לפשוט את המדים ולהצטרף אלינו.
أنا بفقدش الأمل في فكرة إن السلام إنه ما في طريق ثاني غير السلام.
Well, Suleiman, it's been a couple of years since I've had the opportunity to see you, but even seeing that just few-minute trailer of disturbing the peace and the work that you do, I'm inspired and encouraged. So let me introduce people to Suleiman. He is in Ramallah right now in his kitchen, and he told me that you'll notice the heart that's sitting behind him. He's one of the founders of Combatants for Peace, a leader in the peace movement, and he personally has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 2 times, I hear, Suleiman. And as if that is not impressive enough, there is a biography being written about him that will be available for publication next February, I hear. So welcome, we're grateful to have you with us.
Thank you, Mae. Thanks a lot. Is it my turn now to speak?
Yes, yes, greet us, please.
Yeah, thank you, and really appreciate this opportunity to connect with the people and using the opportunity of Corona since everybody at home, and also you have holidays these days, so we hope that everybody have enjoyed the holidays, even in different contexts, and reconnect to their souls and to their families, and so that everybody is safe and their family is safe. As you said, I'm in Ramallah right now. My family live around Jerusalem. That's where I born, in a village outside of Jerusalem. So talking about interfaith and religion, and so I've come from a Muslim family, my background. And as you know, like Ramallah specifically, actually, where I live, also had a historical Christian town, by the way. So that by the rules, still the municipality run by a Christian. This is like a Ottomanic arrangements from the past. And I'm really happy to meet people across the ocean that share with us common values and common ground. And definitely we feel we're all in the same ship, maybe in a different level of privileges and situation. And really, I'm glad for this meeting.
Well, ahlan wa sahlan. We're glad to have you with us. And it's my privilege and opportunity for the first time to meet Tuli. Tuli Flint is here with us from Israel. I didn't hear where you are in Israel, Tuli.
I'm in Tel Aviv right now.
In Tel Aviv.
My clinic is in Tel Aviv. That's the area where I reside.
Yes. Well, and you come to us with just incredible credentials, a lieutenant colonel in the Golani Brigade. I'm told that in the US context, that's the equivalent of being a 4-star, being a 2-star general in the US context, which is quite prestigious. I've been told that you are the most highest ranking former officer in the peace movement in all of Israel. And so you come to us with this background of having been incredibly successful in the Israeli military. And it sounds like you've experienced quite significant transformation, that you are the head of the Israeli side of the movement of Combatants for Peace, and then transitioned from being in the military to becoming a therapist. So I'm interested in hearing your story and a bit of your transformational journey.
Okay, it's always embarrassing to talk about my military background because it's something like, you know, I didn't intend it to be. It's not like I went to West Point, the Israeli West Point, in order to become an officer. I was born when Israel was 19 years old, and when you are born to a very young country that was struggling for its survival, you always hear about, you know, Israel is a small country surrounded by enemies, and you need to protect it. And, you know, you're being groomed into being a soldier and into being very much, the military is something that you really look forward to. I'm, you know, as a clinical social worker and as a criminologist, I'm looking amazed now at the socialization of our youngsters or teenagers, of how they are now preparing themselves to the army, my daughters and their friends and others. So it was really, I was born around Tel Aviv. It's a small town called Holon, and then I went to the Negev for an ecological boarding school when I studied like to be a tour guide. And then I joined the army, and it was very natural to go to the best place that I thought could be. Today I think differently. And I became a medic after being a medic in the Lebanon War. In Lebanon, the Lebanon War began in 1982. I joined the army in 1985, but we were deep inside Lebanon, so I became a medic. And after being a medic, I went to officer school and became a platoon commander, and then a group commander, and then the second in command in a regiment. And then I left the army to become for the reserve duties and the reserve forces. And in the reserve forces, I became a lieutenant colonel. After, you know, in 2006, when the Second Lebanon War was on, I was the second in command in a brigade, and then a regiment commander. But when you are an Israeli in the army, there are parallel routes of your life. One route is, you know, you're in the army, you have your miluim duty, your reserve duty, and you do your duty. And the civilian route, I studied psychology, then clinical social work, became an expert in trauma and post-trauma. And somehow or another, I could work out the conflict of, from one hand, dealing with traumatic soldiers, and from the other hand, taking them to war. At 2012, I left the commanding. I stopped being a combat fighter, and then I became a mental health officer of a division. And I went with them to the Gaza war in 2014. And seeing the same horror looks in both eyes of Palestinians and soldiers and Israeli citizens from both sides of the borders, you know, I went out with three decisions. The first one, that I'm not going to wear uniforms again in the occupied territories ever again, neither in Palestine nor in the Gaza Strip. The second one was to take myself into therapy again, because I understood that I'm post-traumatic from whatever I was doing since 1985 in the army. And the third one, to look for a movement that would help me accomplish something, you know, maybe mending or fixing some of the wrongdoings that I felt that I was part of, that I very much regret now. And Combatants for Peace was a very natural selection, because I'm a combatant. There's a movement fighting for peace. There I meet with Palestinians that you know, Suli was on my list like long time ago. And for me, it's a very, you know, I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you, you know, what a spiritual opportunity it is for us to talk to you, to work together. He's in Ramallah and I'm in Tel Aviv. We really miss each other because, you know, because of COVID-19, we cannot meet each other. There's a double lock-in. The first one because of the COVID, and the second one is the regular locking that would become one day before Passover. And it's Passover tomorrow. And usually there would be lock-in in a siege. And so that's the transformation. That's, you know, when you're talking about the transformation, it's a very big transformation for us from both sides.
Absolutely. I mean, to hear you talk about being a soldier and being in an elite, you know, division of the army and having done that for many years, and then to be willing to lay that down and to be on the other side of things in terms of pursuing peace in a different way. And so in that regard, Suleiman, you're one of the founders of Combatants for Peace. What was your transformational journey like? What made you decide to start the organization, and what's your story?
Thank you. So, and the other side of the story, as Tuli, I grew up in the occupied territory. I born in 1972, and so my background a little bit, because I didn't mention this because I want to put in the movie, so I don't want to focus on that so much. So people will maybe watch the movie. We'll talk about that in a bit. So my background, I was in jail for from the age of 14. I spent 10 years and a half in jail as a political prisoner. So for me, you know, when I was 14, I was drawn to like what we call it, armed struggle and resistance. You know, I was drawn to, you know, Che Guevara and Arafat and this. as many young Middle East people and everywhere elsewhere. In jail time, I learned nonviolence practically through mainly hunger strike, food hunger strike. So we did this a lot in jail. And that was my first introduction when I was 15, and afterwards to what we call it now in Combatants for Peace, there is another way, which is basically nonviolence. So what we are talking about, our transformation, is really transform our energy and struggle into nonviolence, which is a huge change deeply, and in the spiritual level also. And I can just say from my experience, this was a long journey for me. There was not one specific event that happened. There were many small events. And of course, I'm not talking about like the intellectual transformation, which is something, but it's much deeper. So talk about religion and faith. You know, when I was 15, I would read like, Christianity came from our region, and we grew up with this culture, love your enemy, work with your enemy, all of these like beautiful ideas. And also the Islamic part of it, like one of the most famous Islamic scholars, Ali ibn Abi Talib, has a lot of wisdom and books that we read around turning your enemy into a friend, and don't turn your friend into an enemy, all of that. But this takes a long road, and you have nights you don't sleep because you think you're the good guy. So you don't want to sell out or cheat your people, your God, your history, your narrative, your olive trees, your za'atar, your family, your goals, your homeland. So until you are in a place where you have a bit of harmony, step by step, that what you're doing is the right thing to do. And as Tuli mentioned, like some of us, like myself and others, came to the point that there is no military solution for our conflict. And that's what we use in Combatants for Peace actually later on. And so for practical and ideological reasons, and also, reading about Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, and Gandhi and Mandela specifically, Nelson Mandela was very important figure for Palestinian prisoners, usually. We used to study about him. He was in jail at the same time almost. And so we definitely, like some of us, I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody, has been transformed into a nonviolent struggle. And I have to say, on this question, we can deal with this later, like in academic way. It's very hard to convince people under the occupation that nonviolence works. Even people in academia, in the US, everywhere. And for me, this was a practical learning. Whenever we did a hunger strike for 10 days or for 17 days, that was my longest one with other prisoners, we always succeed. With that said, I learned also Hebrew, like it used to be, learn your enemy's language. And the cultural part of it, and the history, and studying the narratives. You spoke about your tours to Middle East, which include different narratives. That's very centrally important, I would say. And the second Intifada in 2005-06, I've been already active in nonviolent circles, Palestinians, but also been looking for Israeli partners. And we heard about this Israeli that refused to serve anymore in the army. And we had secret meetings in Beit Jala and Bethlehem, Jesus City. And from there, we launched the organization in April, actually, like these days, April 2006. And I just want to mention here, like one information that's maybe connected to the movements now. I just remembered now, actually. We tried to find the date, like how can we launch the organization? We were also afraid from the other side. How can we trust each other? And from the public in both sides. This is not a mainstream thing. So we choose, if I remember correctly, the Passover holidays, because it's about freedom of Jews from Egypt. And for Palestinian at the same time, this is the 17th or 16th of April is the Prisoners' Day, which is actually to call for freedom of prisoners. So we find this common ground, and that's where we launched the organization and still around. And I'm happy to see people like Tuli joined in 2014, like others. This makes me really optimistic, as usual.
Well, and what a special time for us to be having this conversation. So for those of us who are Christian, this week is our Holy Week. We celebrated Palm Sunday this past week, and we're anticipating Easter this next Sunday. And my understanding of the Jewish tradition is that this is the week of Passover, which, as you mentioned, is celebrating the Exodus from Egypt. And so these themes You know, for those of us who are Christian, the idea of Jesus coming as we see him as the Messiah is as Savior, as the liberator. And so even in the times of Christ, the people who were anticipating his coming thought that he would be a liberator by violence, and yet his methodology and mechanism was one of peace. So the question or the issue that you said, Suleiman, of today, where people don't believe that nonviolence can actually work, for Christians, that was an issue 2,000 years ago, of thinking that Christ would come as the militaristic savior for liberation, you know, from the Roman Empire. And so here we are during Holy Week, and you know, you are both much closer than I to the sacred city of Jerusalem, but a city that is considered holy to Jews, Muslims, and Christians. What does Holy Week mean, particularly in these times of the coronavirus? You know, what are things like in that regard? And just as you talk about the spiritual significance, we're talking about liberation, but liberation through the pursuit of peace, not through the pursuit of violence. I'm just curious if you would each reflect a bit on the holy sacredness of this particular moment. Do you want to go first, Tuli?
Yeah, I can. Basically, I think, you know, the corona is an opportunity to practice powerlessness, because we all are, you know, all human beings are powerless against this plague. You know, and it doesn't, the coronavirus does not know color, does not know religion, does not know, and it is not racist in any way, and it's not, and it hits the same everywhere. And, you know, the ones that were arrogant are now suffering more, and the ones that were prepared for that are now, you know, out of the curve, and going out of the siege from the corona. But, you know, I regret to say that none of the leaders of the Middle East, you know, I can talk about Israelis that disappoint me, but, you know, I'm disappointed by all the leaders around me, including religious leaders, because I haven't heard anyone saying, listen, this is the time to unite. You know, I would expect political leaders, religious leaders, spiritual leaders to step out and say, let's join hand across the separation wall and say, you know, Palestinians across the separation wall, across the border with Gaza, across everyone, because, you know, this is something that does not differentiate between people, so let us not differentiate between people. God does not differentiate between us when he gives us the COVID-19. And basically, it's an opportunity to practice powerlessness. We are powerless, but we are not helpless. You know, despair comes from powerlessness combined with helplessness. This is when we despair. But when we remember that we are not helpless, we can, you know, join hands from both sides. We can help each other. We can cry for help and you know, ask help from God and from science, because, you know, both can go together, and from spirituality and religious, if you know, whenever you. So basically, I regret to say that the occupation is doing the same horrible stuff that it was doing beforehand. The only difference is that now I see the soldiers going with masks. And as a therapist for post-trauma, I work with those soldiers. They come to me in the civilian stage, and there are many of them are shocked and horrified by the orders that they were given. Just like the snipers in the Gaza border, that I worked with some of them that were very much post-traumatic after, you know, being told to shoot at civilians, and the soldiers that are wearing like white uniforms, clean uniforms, in order to go into Bethlehem, where you have coronavirus, and still arrest people, demolish houses, and do things like that. So we are missing an opportunity, a spiritual opportunity and a global opportunity, maybe a universal opportunity of getting beyond and above our conflict to, you know, to join hand and work together. And all the leaders of the region are missing it. Maybe some spiritual leaders are talking about that, but I never heard someone talking about that, neither priest, nor pastor, nor rabbi, not an imam, saying this is something that does not consider religious as something different. So I'm sorry to say that on a personal level we have a very good opportunity. On a national level or international level, we are so missing an opportunity of working together that it saddens my heart.
I heard you and Suleiman both say when we were preparing for this conversation that you see the COVID-19 reality as being an opportunity. So I'm interested to hear you reflect about that as well, Suli.
Yeah, so thank you. First, I would say this time is very deeply spiritually important in our cultural heritage. That if I come from an indigenous family, if you want, so my mom in coming days there is something like called white nights. I don't know what is that even exactly. That she has to fast. It's something connected to the moon and to like Abrahamic religion anyway. So the turning now with the time from winter to springtime, and the life is coming back, celebrating life and all the religious holidays and non-religious holidays, the traditional one, even the pre-Abrahamic holidays, is very important moments for life, for animals, for us as a human, for the nature. I would say that comes this year with this situation with the corona. And also I would say, like a side note, for me personally, I am very, Tuli knows this, I go all the time, I go to the desert. And that's where I got a lot of like even, like the power of the nature and life and inspired. Last actually Passover, like this time I was in Sinai with a group of Palestinians and Israelis and internationals actually for 1 week. And was very deep. For me, it was the first time to be there. And this was very, very deep, like to watch the sunrise, the sunset, the moon from there. And this is where the whole area that the whole messages came from God. For me, like as I grew up here, like the tragedies and the viruses and the challenges that we face now, but in generally, it's really an opportunity with a little suffering, let's say. It's an opportunity to reconnect to ourselves, to reconnect to our nature, to humanity. We've been already seeing, I was in the nature around Ramallah today for the hours that's allowed. And already we felt, we smell like, breathe more clean oxygen compared to other time. Even though we don't have a big industrial zone, we are talking about the cars, there is no flight. And it's really like we start to feel that. Next to my home here, I start to see more animals coming to the town. I'm really happy to see that. And in the personal level, there's a bit of time now also to feel empathy also with our neighbors, to show solidarity with our neighbors, to also unite and be close to our families, to, like many people have not really good connection with our families everywhere, with our communities. And as we see, the systems is struggling to stay on power from the whole capitalistic system. I see, like I'm following also, maybe I'm optimistic by my nature. I see a lot of local, small, even international good initiatives and acts of kindness. And even the head of UN called for a global ceasefire like a few days ago. There is shakings of the system. The system that we live in right now is not stable, is not healthy, is not environmentally good, is not good for our souls. So this is really, this little virus is really like giving a big opportunity also across the borders, across the colors and religion and faith to work together for much better like time, not just to come now, I would say. And I know that some people, as maybe Tuli, practice this even more than me, like meditation and yoga and praying. And I have a friend, I was reading a message from Israeli friend. He got a coronavirus. I was really surprised to see how positive this person have attitude of positivity around the corona. He wrote like suggesting people, to fast a bit, to pray, to do meditation, to sit in the sun around the corner of the house, and to reconnect with himself or herself, like at this time. For me, on the other hand, as Palestinian now, I just want to say that our trauma, like personally and the community, is different from other countries because we've been, for us, the word in Arabic, the isolation, the quarantine, it means a curfew, means it has a very political context and traumatizing because we've been under curfew many times. So our people used to be under curfew, which means army, arresting, and all of that. So basically, there is also interesting energy here because our rule was to oppose the curfew and to resist the curfew and to sneak and to find roads and not to follow the order. And now we want to follow the order, basically. So there's a bit of struggle here. And the word for me, even personally, like the word bidud in Hebrew or in Arabic, azl, isolation, it reminds me also of my jail time, not in generally in a normal jail with a bunch of people. There is also timing when they take you to isolation and with torture with specific punishment. I've been in this also. So there's a lot of things, but I'm really welcoming and I wish we welcome the virus, welcome the everything coming with the virus, the fear that coming with the virus, the dreams, and also to transform, as we did transform ourselves from fear to trust, not to work together out of fear. And that's how the system works. We need really to change this as a foundation thing.
One of the things I hear you both talking about is the way that the COVID virus, on one hand, hasn't changed the current reality. The things that were happening in the occupation are continuing. You know, like you said, Julie, the soldiers might be wearing masks. It might look a little differently, but there's still home demolitions. There's still some of these realities, certainly of the lack of ability to move and the restrictions on movement that you were talking about, Suli. But I'm moved hearing you both talk because there's an undercurrent that I've heard you both express of a desire for transformation, but transformation that comes from a humility. I mean, I heard you say, Tuli, powerlessness, but not helplessness. And so talk to us a bit about some of the work that Combatants for Peace does. I have found one of the most moving things that I have seen, and I've only seen it from a distance. I've not been with you in person when this has happened, but these memorial services that you do to commemorate the lives lost in conflict. Talk to us about why you do that. And I mean, it's incredibly moving to see, you know, Israelis and Palestinians come together and grieve a common loss, but it sounds like it's also transformative. So why do you do that, and what's the significance? You know, and tell us more about it, please.
I think that, Suli, can I go first, or do you want to go to be the first? Okay,
yeah,
thank you. All right, thank you. Basically, I think that one of the major transformation points for all of us in Combatants for Peace is getting near to death and getting near to people that we knew and loved that have died in the conflict. And this is one major transformation point for us all, you know, in taking it upon ourselves to make sure that no other families or friends would suffer the loss of loved ones. So basically, the Memorial Day is a way to try to change it. Because in Israel, the Memorial Day, I know I've been in other states in the national Memorial Days. It's very different. In America, the Memorial Day is like a shopping day, and here in Israel, the Memorial Day, everything stops. It's like the most sacred day for both secular and religious people together. Israelis, Jews. It used to be for me as a Jew. It was something that, you know, I commemorate the loss of my loved ones, the Jewish Israeli, or maybe the Druze that fought with me with the IDF up until 2014. So in the Memorial Day, you are brought up to consider the Memorial Day as the most holy day of the whole year, because we sound the siren twice, everyone stops and stands still in the middle of the day, 11 o'clock at 8 o'clock at night, at p.m., 8 p.m. and 11 in the morning afterwards. Everyone goes to the cemeteries, everyone goes to a ceremony. This is something very big in Israeli society. And the Memorial Day, the shared Memorial Day, the joint Memorial Day, have started like 14 years ago with 70 people, 70 people. And now last year we had 9,500 attendance and 35,000 online attendance. And we hope to even enlarge the number now. And for us, and actually it's the largest ceremony apart from the governmental ceremony in Israel. And people come there in order to check on themselves and to say, I'm here with you. I appreciate the fact that both sides have suffered losses, that both sides are in a state of suffering because of the conflict. And it's very moving to meet Palestinians that are joining in with us in such a holy day. And it's very moving to see so many Israelis are standing to commemorate Palestinians that have lost their lives, and not only, and we're not talking only about, soldiers now, we're talking about the price of the conflict. So basically the Memorial Day has become very significant to us all, because this is the time that we really step out of the dark. We do many other stuff in Palestine and in Israel, and we try to do things over the year. But this is a day that we're able to say to our friends, and I lost many friends from the army that don't want to talk to me anymore because I'm considered a traitor. Now I cheated upon them because I was the commander, and now I'm with the enemy, and vice versa. It's like whenever we hug together, when there's no coronavirus, we hug a lot. So whenever we hug, it's the hug of a traitors. But basically, the Memorial Day is an opportunity to chip in and to say, I'm with you. Even those who are not able to be activists on the ground, go and, have tear gas in their eyes and lungs and go to work and rebuild things in Palestine and do things actively, like on the ground activism, nonviolent activism. But coming to the Memorial Day or attending the Memorial Day in a video is a way to say, I'm in, I'm with you, and I chip in the way I can do this. And many people consider it their activism. And it's a very good one, because it's although there are numbers of people that are coming, it's not mainstream. In no way it is mainstream, but it is going bigger. It's growing bigger, and this is an amazing opportunity.
And my understanding is that everyone will be able to join this year, because this year's memorial service will be on April 27th and will be digital. So we'll be advertising that at Churches for Middle East Peace, and I know on Combatants for Peace website as well. We're proud to be one of the sponsors of it. I've been deeply moved by it. I actually had a brother who was killed when I was a child, and it was my entire life has been shaped by it. It was under very different circumstances, of course, but I think what's so moving about the memorial service is that it's a willingness to enter into one another's pain, and that as we seek to carry that pain, I believe it to be transformative. And so Suleiman, tell us about the significance from your perspective, please.
I think the context is this: like, we have the reality, the harsh reality, with all the challenges, with the imbalance in power and life under the occupation and all of that. With that big situation that we can talk about it like in details, we need like basically a visionary, a few people usually, and that's what I know from my jail time. Even like a revolution is just usually a small group of dreamers. It does have that big element of vision and dream that really one side, it does see the reality, and the other side, it has to give hope and to carry hope, and also to motivate people to join. And as like we know from other experiences, people at the beginning, they would ignore you, and then maybe they will fight against you, of course, when you became serious, and a big movement, especially working with other organizations, and and the way more people join. Like as Tuli mentioned, last year we have almost 9,000 people, and 50,000 people watch us online, and 9,000 people on the place. This is a huge thing for like a small organization at the end of the day, you know, for our time and even money-wise and organizing and political circumstances and the context. So for me, I've been in the first ones also, like 15 years ago. Was very small, and also it was a very deep experience for me, coming from a Palestinian background narrative. You know, this is an Israeli day, and how can I even feel any kind of empathy, even if I have some Israeli friends at the time, to like a national Israeli day, to, you know, because, you know, like what we say in narratives, like the hero on one side is a terrorist on the other side, and vice versa. So it's very challenging, both intellectually and spiritual wise. With that said, I would say like my experience have been very moving every year. Like really last year, I would say in summer, in the last year, I felt moved like the first year, even more, and more motivated because I saw more people actually. And everyone like that passed through this experience, they never go back again to their norm anymore. This is not, we used to call it a Palestinian-Israeli Alternative Day, Memorial Day. So we stopped this and we call it the Palestinian-Israeli Memorial Day. And this is for us, comes in the same moment with the Israeli Memorial Day, because we want this to be the norm. So in order to change the system, and that's our experience, in one side, we uphold the system, we do demonstrations, we do everything we could non-violently and together. In the same time, we try to create realities. And the Memorial Day, as one of our people that really behind the Memorial Day, Khinalon, he's in the movie a lot, he's my friend, he said this is also part of the reality. So the Memorial Day, Palestinian-Israeli one, became part of the reality. And I think it's very important to find alternative to whatever we oppose to. It's not just we don't want this, we don't want this, we want this, and that's what we struggle for. I believe that in every other aspect, we could have a common joint aspiration for both people, because this is a recognition of the pain, and we get out of what we call it like a competitive victimhood in this. Because whenever you talk to Palestinian Israeli in any meeting, you know, there is a competing who's suffering more and who's more victim. And while we recognize the victimhood on both sides without comparing, of course, the amount of suffering under the occupation, you can't compare it, obviously. But I don't feel losing my Palestinian identity, of narrative, the rights, when I recognize, you know, like the Holocaust, or recognize the suffering of my Israeli friends if they lost somebody in the family. The pain is just the same across the board, of course.
Well, I can't believe our time. We only have about 10 minutes left. I feel like it just went so quickly. And we have some questions coming from people in the audience. Two of them that have been asked thus far. The first, are there participants in Combatants for Peace from Gaza? And then the second, which I definitely wanted us to spend some time talking about, is, you know, what can we do in the US to help support Combatants for Peace? How can we engage? What types of constructive steps can we take to support your efforts? Tuli, I think you're giving us wonderful words, but you're unmute.
Yeah. I think, Suli, maybe you go first, because, you know, it's like we dance the same dance. Let's change the dance. You go first.
Okay, also I was in mute, which is a good second to think. So let me say this. Firstly, like where we located, where we work, we have members like almost across the Holy Land, like in both sides, from the north to the south, like from Tel Aviv to Beersheba to Haifa to Nablus to Ramallah, where I'm located now, in Jerusalem, of course, in Jericho and Hebron and so on. In Gaza, we have friends and supporters and one of them spoke last year in the Memorial Day remotely, for example, and they had also watched it in Gaza. Due to the separation, you know, Gaza under the siege 15 years already, so there is impossible physical communication there. So that's in Gaza. In the US and outside world, like let's say the international world, yeah, I just want to mention practically, and Tulu can take the microphone, that we have American Friends of Combatants for Peace. So you can check the website and the Facebook page, and that's where the Memorial Day will be screened actually. That's one thing. So you can be in touch with our director there, Beth Sherman. May you know her, so that's possible to be in touch with her to organize like the Memorial Day events or like support Combatants for Peace financially. Donation also important, specifically at this time. I don't know to turn this into fundraising, but this is the time that there is a challenges on that side also. Of course, what we're doing now, and like we supposed to do a speaking tour with you, so it canceled because like postponed it for the because of the current corona. So I mean, there are a few practical steps that can be done, but that's our address in the US, American Friends of Combatants for Peace. And I saw people wrote the movie. You can see it alone. And I believe I saw like a lot of messages in WhatsApp, so I don't have the last update. But I believe we are screening the movie, maybe Tuli knows more, like Saturday night. And then you have opportunity to meet with the producer and some of our activists from the movie and from the movement together in English. So I believe it's Saturday. So if you keep looking at our Facebook, or we can update you, Mae, so you can send it out to people.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share that. And Suleiman, I don't know if I told you, after we did that screening, you know, in Washington, D.C. of Disturbing the Peace, it was at an evangelical church, a church that doesn't often talk about Israel because it's very controversial and, you know, the theology is very complex. And they said that that movie was one of the most transformative experiences that they've had. You know, and it was very courageous of them to show it for their church. You know, and then we had the conversation afterwards. So it was very moving and very effective. So thank you. Yeah, Tuli, other ideas from you, please.
Yeah, one thing that we both believe in, and we all believe in the movement, is coalitions. And you know, although we don't have like actual activists from Gaza now that we can meet, but we work with coalitions from the border with Gaza, and there are many small organizations like Other Voice and the Lighthouse and other movements that are working in Gaza, and we work with them. And you know, I'm waiting for the opportunity to meet with Gaza people after we were fighting each other. And you know, there are people, and we get in contact with each other, hear our voice and other things. So we are looking forward to the time that the siege on Gaza would be over, and Gaza people can come and go wherever they want to, because it's the largest, you know, it's the largest prison on earth now. And I'm terrified of thinking what COVID-19 will do in Gaza Strip. I hope that they will have all the help that they can get. And this is something, you know, it gets me to the point when I talked about powerlessness and helplessness. We're not powerless against the occupation now, because we are struggling against the occupation, and we risk our jobs and you know, sometimes our freedom, you know, when we struggle. But what Americans can do is to make sure that the Palestinian issue is not forgotten. Because from time to time, I have the feeling that, you know, with all the havoc that is going on in the world right now, and all the things that are going on in the world, it's very easy to forget that somewhere there are 3 million people under occupation, under siege, being controlled by other. And you know, whoever listens to this webinar that can purvey, you know, take the word somewhere else, invite us, and you know, we can talk via Zoom, or when we can come, We can come over. You can, watching the movie and inviting other people to watch the movie, watch the ceremony, and invite other people to watch the ceremony, because basically the narrative of Israeli Hasbara is very strong. Like, the Palestinians are bad, the Israelis are good, we are the victims. It's nothing like that. We are all victims of the same corrupted system. That, the occupation, I was born the year the occupation started. So the occupation is 52 right now. So basically, or 70. Basically, the conflict is 140 years old, and the conflict, the extreme conflict is 72 years old, and the occupation of the Palestine is 52 years old. So we, and even making a point, we make it a point in the movement to talk about the Nakba, the suffering of the Palestinians from 1948. And the good thing is that Israeli Palestinians are also joining in the movement now in order to lift all the occupation in the heart, the occupation in the soul, the occupation in the mind, and the real occupation. So this is something that, even small things like making sure that Palestine is on the maps in schools, making sure that when teachers talk about, the establishment of the State of Israel, talk about the suffering of the Palestinians and the fact that they're waiting for freedom. When you talk about nonviolent communication, join in, look to things like that. The educational level and the narrative level is very important, because if the Palestinian narrative would be strong enough, then the occupation would stop. And when in the years of the establishment of the State of Israel, there were more supporters for the establishment of the State of Israel outside Israel than inside Israel. There were more people outside that supported the idea, and then our forefathers could go to the UN and ask for a country. I really wait for the time that there would be enough supporters of Palestinian freedom outside Palestine and Israel, that the pressure from the outside would be very, very strong. And there are various ways. For instance, we all of us in the movement, we took upon ourselves to not serve in the occupied territories or in the Gaza, in the army anymore. We are not buying products that are being produced in the Palestinian lands. We're not buying. It's the internal boycott. The internal boycott of not supporting the industry that is in Palestine, the Israeli industry in Palestine that is illegal, polluting water, polluting everything. And whoever listened to us, whatever field of interest you are in, like ecology, we fight in the ecology level about the pollution of water in Palestine and Israel because of the industry there. If it's like human rights, if it's therapy, if it's like nonviolent activism, anyway, the occupation is all over us. It's like cancer that spreads to every limb of the organ of the State of Israel and the State of Palestine, to be the State of Palestine.
A great word for us to end on, and I can't believe our time has already, it just feels like it disappeared, but a great word for us to end on is what I heard you both say about we're not only seeking liberation of the occupation or liberation just for Palestinians, but liberation for all of us. And that there's this transformational journey that you each have experienced and are inviting us into to be transformed so that we're not powerless, or as we acknowledge our powerlessness, that we know we're not helpless in terms of being able to make a difference. So I'm sorry that we're saying goodbye so quickly, but the invitation is for others to engage, to watch your film. We'll share information about that on our social media. I saw that you said, Suleiman, this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or New York time, and then 10 a.m. California time, there'll be a screening of the film. And then we'll see you again on April 27th for these memorials with Combatants for Peace. So thank you both very much for being with us. Peace to you this holy week.
Thank you. Amen. Thank you.
Blessings
Thank you,
to you and your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody.